How's it going, everyone? And just want to welcome all the new subscribers to the channel, and thank you for subscribing. So for those who've been following me for a while know that I make a few things for my channel to try and make things a little bit easier. Okay. So anyways, like one of the things I made, you know, the p.o.b stand, or point of balance. If you guys haven't seen it, I have a video on it. It's just 1x2 for the base, 1-inch wooden dowel with a 1/2 inch with a notch in the 1/2 inch, and it just sits in there. Okay, same with this, just pressed in. Simple, easy, works great. Sent one over to Joe Steele. He loves it, at least says he does. Says it's such an easy little thing that, you know, that it helps you find the p.o.b on your sword, which is actually important. So things like that. Also, you know, like when I get a new sword in, you know, this right here, measuring board. I used to take a tape measure, put it on the end of my sword, pull it down, but I didn't like doing that. You know, you are hooking a metal deal to the tip of your sword and trying to get an accurate measurement and stuff. But with this, I can just lay it on there from one end and the other, and it tells me exactly how long it is. I can measure the sori on it at the same time. It's very simple. The only thing I still have to do is put risers on the bottom. You know, that's about it. Now, the one thing I always hated, though, filming swords, especially trying to get that hamon line without that big, huge glare. I always hated that glare. So I was thinking, how can I mitigate that glare from the light? Obviously I could do a setup like this. You know, I just have one light off over here. We do have recessed lights in here, but it just blasts the hell out of it. You know, I can change them from a floodlight look to a narrow look, but that's about it. I do have diffusions screens. Unfortunately, I actually need to get a stand that actually holds them because they're pretty big. So I haven't done that yet. So, but I do like using diffusion screens. And then I could put it up wherever the light's coming in at. So, but still you get that glare, and that glare just sucks sometimes when you're trying to show off the hamon line. So I started thinking about it. We all have these, okay? Doesn't matter if it's European sword, Japanese sword, Chinese sword. We got these. It has a little cutout right here, you know, pretty standard 1 to 2 to 3, you know, sword stand. And don't get me wrong, they're handy. They're handy to have, especially if you're storing it. But the problem with these is they're designed for the sword to sit in there in its saya. So if you're going to put a bare blade on there to show it, it just sits there and it does that. It wants to rock back and forth. Well, I started thinking about if that sword lays back and you have light coming in from this side, light travels, it's going to hit and reflect, and that's what gives you that big fat glare. So I started thinking, what if I made a different type of stand that literally kept the blade straight up and down? Would that help mitigate like that glare? Because I've had a few videos where that glare is just going across the blade, you know, just traveling with it, and it just sucks. So I decided to make this. I don't know, I'm thinking about calling it the AGS, anti-glare stand. It does work a little bit. It doesn't, because the way this works, it's got notches in it. It's got one there, as you can see. It got a little wonky from the belt grinder, and then one on the very back. And they're different sizes, so the wider the blade goes in this part, the thinner the blade goes right here. So it sits straight up and down. Now it's not super tight because you need to be able to take the sword out, so it's a little loose. It may like canter just a little bit. Like I said, I kind of messed up a little bit right there. But it works pretty good, and it holds the blade straight up and down so you get a better look at the Hamon line. Because yeah, like I said, I always hated that glare from the light. If you use a diffusion, you're still going to get a glare. And with swords being such polished out, it's kind of a pain in the butt to get rid of. So that's why I made that. And it works pretty decently. It does help mitigate that glare down. We also got another light right here. It's a ceiling fan that can blast all the way over here. And if I have our shades open, all that light's coming in and it just really glares out everything. But I did notice if I just take the blade, keep it straight up and down, it works out a lot better because it's not tilting and being like a mirror and reflecting the light off of it, because it's straight up and down, so the light's actually hitting. If it comes from this way, it's kind of just hitting straight down, and if it's hitting that way, it's kind of not hitting full on the edge. So works kind of. But again, it just shows you can get creative. And this thing, again, wasn't hard. I used a scale saw to cut the end off. I was going to try and document the making of this. And until I pulled out the router, and the router that I have, router bits like the stick, sliced my thumb open. Luckily it wasn't bad. So I said, screw it, not going to router it. But I used a jigsaw to cut the wood. You can use a handsaw. And the dowels are just 1-inch dowels, and I just drilled it and took a handsaw and notched it out. Then took it to the little belt grinder to kind of try and fine tune it. But it's just glued together. These are just pressed in. It's real simple. It's not very hard to do. And I just put a coat stain on it, make it look nice. But yeah, I mean, it kind of works. You can even use this as a regular stand. It will hold a sword on it in the saya. I wouldn't leave it there because it will fall if you bump it, because it's not made for that. It is made for like a blade to sit in there, basically. So yeah, it's like I said, these aren't bad if you're going to start with in the saya, but if you want to show the blade off or whatever, I think that works a little bit better, and it does help mitigate, like I said, that glare just a little bit more, because it is hard to get rid of. Even Joe Steele said that's like one of the hardest things to do, is try and get that glare off the blade, you know, so you can really show the Hamon line, because it can be annoying at times. It really can. So not a very long one this time. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Informative. Maybe you guys can think of something different for your videos or whatever. Like I said, I like doing stuff like this. It's simple, it's easy. That only took me like an hour to put together, if that. I mean, not very long. So I'll see you guys later, and we'll catch you on the next one.